This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. A packed show today. It's Masters Week, and we have signs of life in the Winnipeg Jets after a huge weekend sweeping the Wings and Devils and maintaining their hold on the 8th spot and final wildcard spot in the Western Conference, even with the Calgary Flames winning both their games on the weekend, setting up a massive tilt, to say the least, on Wednesday with Calgary coming here to Winnipeg. But lots to get to today on both the big wins on the weekend, what we saw from the Winnipeg Jets, and the playoff picture as we get down the final stretch heading to Game 82. Going to be a great one today. John Liu from TSN jumping on Winnipeg Sports Talk, and we'll also welcome in Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. And with Masters Week here, we're going to be talking a little golf for the next few days before they tee it up at Augusta National. Eric Johnson, one of the top players in Manitoba for many years, and the working with TaylorMade's going to jump on. Looking forward to having Easy E on the show as well, get his thoughts. And we are launching a Masters contest with some stuff from TaylorMade, some great rounds from our friends over at Breezy Bend. So make sure to stay tuned for that a little bit later on in the program. Or if you're listening to the podcast, head on over to our website at winnipegsportstalk.com or our socials, and make sure you get in on that contest before they tee it up on Thursday morning. So Hammer, John Liu, some golf talk with Eric Johnson. Cannot wait for it, but you know where we're starting, and that is with those big wins on the weekend. A cathartic win on Friday with some of the guys that were in the biggest slumps all scoring in the first period. And we'll talk about this when we get Remis in here, but the fans certainly stepping up as well. First show of April. Got to welcome on a few new sponsors to the show. Great to have Modern Man Barbershops with us, as well as Aquatech, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, Vita Health Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, of course, our friends over at Princess Auto, Consolidated Supply, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, and the gang at Aikens Lake is back for another summer. And, of course, Breezy Bend. And, as I say, we'll have a great golf contest, so tune in for that a little bit later on. Our friends over at Coolbet. And I've already got a doozy for our Why Not question of the day for Not Autocorp, which we'll get to in a minute. But let's get to it and welcome in Michael Remis to get this show on the road. Remo, what is good, man? How about that weekend? The vibes are high again around Winnipeg after two of the most desperately needed wins I can remember in a long, long time.
Yeah, it was what a swing of emotions. After Tuesday's loss to San Jose, we're feeling very down here. And you had a very emotional show Wednesday. The feedback from listeners and viewers was incredible. And we're kind of like, what's going on with this team? Where have they been? And, you're looking at the schedule. You thought it kind of lined up nicely. They have this stretch at home. They're playing teams at back-to-back. And the atmosphere on Friday's game in the building was incredible. People are ready to party. They want to experience playoff hockey again. The weather, it's supposed to be warming up. I don't know if it has. It's not like minus 30. So we're having around zero. Like, it's not, I'm not plugging in my car every day anymore. So, that's better. You can feel it turning, and spring, spring is supposedly here. So, you got to see some great action Friday, Sunday. So I think people are now excited. The Jets, we can joke that they're back. We'll have to see it last, but I think it was definitely encouraging you're feeling a lot better. And, it was looking, it was, again, entertaining games, and they did finally score some goals. 12 goals on the weekend. The 8 previous games before Friday, they had only scored 12. So it shows you where the team is at. And a lot of guys getting, scoring for the first time in a while. Shifley snapping the 9-game goal streak on Friday. I think I did call on this show. I couldn't find the clip, but I definitely said they were winning both games. And
you did. You called that. I don't know whether it was on the show or afterwards. You said it a couple times to me, and I love the positivity. And yeah, listen, the game the Tuesday was a disaster. We heard from Bones afterwards. I mean, his boat is, well, I don't want to say it dejected, but he was down and he called out his team as obviously I think was necessary. And in a lot of ways, Wednesday sort of got it out of the system. I think the positivity sort of returned on Thursday into Friday. And hey, by the time, and maybe we do this all the time, we're looking forward to that game on Friday night to see what the Winnipeg Jets could do coming back at home. And, it was a huge win for so many reasons. I mean, my God, we'd spend enough time talking about how long it had been since Mark Shifley had scored and Blake Wheeler had scored and Kyle Connor had scored. And for all 3 of those players to score in the first period of the game on Friday night, you could not have asked, you could not have written a script better for the team and those players as the way things started out on Friday. And, we'll talk about this with John Liu a little later on. I do want to bring up Connor Hellebuyck, though, because, listen, the game last night, I blame the Wave for ruining the shutout in the final seconds. But on Friday, this was a game that the Jets were clearly in hand through most of the game. But if you will recall, Reem, Hellebuyck made one massive save point blank when it was 0-0, and the Jets had been pushing but hadn't scored early on in that game. And I really do think that save in particular, Rick Bowness often talks about timely saves. I mean, to get that save when they had it, just to give the team a little bit more time to try to finally get that first goal was huge. And, once the guys started feeling it, they did not turn back. And listen, we're going to break down the game and, who played well, some of the stars of the weekend and who stepped up. But like I mentioned right off the bat, I got to give a huge shout out to the fans that bought tickets and showed up to those games on Friday and Sunday night. I was unsure as to how the mood would be going into Friday's game. I mean, I think that there's a ton of anxiety amongst Jet fans and a lot of angst coming out of the game on San Jose. And, listen, there justifiably, I think, was quite a bit of negativity around just what's happened with the team over the last couple months and the situation that they were in. But I felt a buzz before even puck drop walking into the building on Friday night. And who knows, maybe it could have gone differently if that early goal that I just mentioned, that save that Connor Hellebuyck made, goes in. And there's a bit of a here we go again feeling or something like that. But I thought that the fans really, really brought it. We heard it from a number of players, including Connor Hellebuyck last night. And to have that sort of an atmosphere, to have that group really get behind the team, when frankly, I think they really needed it, was a big part of the weekend as well. And I'll tell you what, obviously there's been some crowds this year that have not been close to filling the building. I was very unsure as to what that game last night was going to look like. A Sunday night game against a team like New Jersey. Well, it was a great crowd. And you really felt that same energy that we got in the building on Friday night back there on Sunday. And, the fans were rewarded with 2 of the biggest wins of the season. And now it sets up, Primo, for this game on Wednesday. And I tweeted this out last night, and I try not to overstate things. And maybe people in the chat can give us a suggestion. There's actually a couple why not questions of the day from our friends over at Not AutoCorp at Waverly and McGillivray. But I guess one is, where does this rank, considering the situation, everything happening with the organization around it, the changes that could be coming in the offseason, the future players, where does this game rank amongst the biggest regular season games that this organization and franchise has had since 2011? I think it's right up there. And I'm certainly open to getting some other suggestions of other games. I know there was people brought up those back-to-back games against Washington in March, but I mean, we're coming down to the short strokes of this regular season. And this game, for all intents and purposes, when you look at Calgary's schedule the rest of the way, playing some of the worst teams in the league, is going to feel like a playoff. And Remo, you were mentioning that, it's still pretty cold outside. Could it be somewhat of could it be somewhat poetic that we're hoping for a whiteout in April and we're going to probably get one on Wednesday? Not necessarily in the stands, although I have a feeling people will do it, but with a blizzard or 20 to 25 centimeters of snow. I'm hoping that is somewhat poetic, and it tells us that there will be a whiteout on the way. But Wednesday, as far as the game goes, it doesn't get much bigger. Calgary's on a bit of a run right now. The Winnipeg Jets have won 2 in a row. Calgary could very well be tied with the Winnipeg Jets going into that game if they beat Chicago at home on Tuesday night. And as they say, bring on the snow, bring on the flames. This is going to be a very, very fun week. And as they say, the vibe check is going up after those 2 big wins on the weekend.
Yeah, you got to be feeling good again. Friday, heading into the weekend, people are on spring break. I think you got to feel good about where they were. And again, the guys scoring who hadn't scored in a while, Mark Scheifele, you mentioned, first time in 9. Blake Wheeler, first time in 22. Kyle Connor, goals have been hard for him to come by, and he hit his 30th goal of the season. Ranked second in franchise history with the most 30-goal seasons, which is 5, which I can't believe he's already at 5 30-goal seasons. I think the big thing for me, as you mentioned, that huge save Hellebuyck making on Friday, timely save, but scoring first. You've seen such a long stretch here of just within the first 5 minutes getting scored on, and you're chasing the game and trying to cut back in. And then Blake Wheeler mentioned this yesterday. When they play with a lead, they're a different team. And when scoring first, it seems like they haven't been doing it a lot, but they're 29-9-2 when scoring first, which is, I think, pretty good record. And at home, so they still have the 3rd best home record in the league, 24-12-2. And, I had joked last week coming in, they're going to sweep this homestand. Well, they've got the first 2, and you have, 3 more, all against teams that are not in the playoffs. I know Calgary and Nashville are right on the cusp, but they're technically not. And this way it's lined up, you've played 2 teams so far in the second of back-to-backs, and you're going to play a third on Wednesday here. And so I think you do have to feel good. The guys are scoring. People are going to the games and know we're on the verge of could possibly playoff hockey. We saw Nikolai Ehlers getting 4 minutes on the power play yesterday, which is kind of unheard of for this season.
He's on PP1.
Yeah,
he's on PP1. I took the picture last night from I was in the lower bowl last night at 2:06. He came out on that power play, and there was Ehlers, and I made a point of taking a picture.
You did.
And tweeting it out. And listen, that was great to see. Listen, we're going to get into Scheifele moving to the wing and the success that line he, PLD, and Kyle Connor had. But the second line, I can't give enough credit to Vlad Nemetsnikov. He has really turned into maybe the new Swiss Army knife of the Winnipeg Jets. He does so many little things. He's in the right spot. He plays smart. He's reliable defensively. And he wins battles. And he gets the puck. And he gives it to players like Nikolai Ehlers to make things happen. And listen, I think there was a lot of questions about what Blake Wheeler has left in the tank. I mean, considering what we've seen over the last month or so, maybe more. Wheeler had 2 really strong games. And it was so funny because he scored that goal, Reem, on Friday, and it was a very, very muted celebration. And, usually when guys score after going 20-plus games without scoring, there's a real exhale. Well, he said afterwards the reason why he didn't is because he was almost sure that it was offside. So finally it counted, it went through, and then I think the exhale. There was an interesting bit of and the pass from Nikolai Ehlers was just absolutely incredible. I mean, just get your stick down in the blue paint, go figure, and the puck was in the net. But Wheeler, after it was officially a goal, looked over to Nick and said, "Thanks, man. I really needed that." And, he needed that. Mark Scheifele needed it. Kyle Connor needed it. And, that first period really did set the tone for the rest of the weekend. And to the Winnipeg Jets' credit, they continued rolling with it. So they got done what they had to get done, Remo. I don't know whether those were must wins or can't loses, but they ticked off both of the boxes in there. And now, you look at this, the makeup of the line, and we can't forget about Nito Niederreiter playing along with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton. That line was phenomenal. And Morgan Barron, the play that he made last night, Remo, as the fastest skater on the Winnipeg Jets, as we all know from the skills competition, getting just a half step on the Jersey defenseman, using his speed to create a penalty shot and then converting on that. Everyone really seemed to step up. And of course, especially, I got to give credit to the defenseman as well on Friday night. Because the one thing that was, I think, surprising to a lot of people, I did the OB pregame show for the first hour, and we didn't know at that time that Josh Morrissey wouldn't be playing. Morrissey out of the lineup. Logan Stanley came in. I thought Neil Pionk had one of his strongest games of the season when the team really needed it. But there was a lot of guys, I think, that can feel really good about their contributions to the win. And obviously, as a team, they looked as good as they have in a long, long time, albeit the bar was pretty low. And obviously, they've got some real momentum going into, what can only be described as really a do-or-die game when the Flames come here on Wednesday.
Yeah, you look at Friday's game, 6 different goal scorers certainly stood out, and we've already talked about Connor, Wheeler, Scheifele getting the board. Dylan DeMello, who is having an uptick offensive season with a gorgeous snipe. He had all the time in the world on that one, and Nito Niederreiter as well going to the net, putting one in, and you mentioned the Ehlers scoring as well. And yesterday, Ehlers with the 2 goals, Morgan Barron penalty shot. And Barron has been so good, I think, the last month and a bit here, and you saw that speed. You're right, the biggest cheer on the weekend was maybe Neil Pionk on Friday on the back check there, trying to chase down a breakaway. And he led the team. Usually it's Josh Morrissey leading the team in minutes, but it was actually Neil Pionk leading them yesterday. And, Josh Morrissey goes out Friday. Dylan Samberg steps in again on the top pair. And it's amazing to me that this guy sometimes is a healthy scratch, but when your top defenseman is out, they're like, oh, yeah, you can just go play on the top pair with Dylan DeMello. Like I said after the first time he did that there's no reason for him to sit out, but they kind of still been healthy scratching him once in a while. But I think as we're down to the final games of the season, I think Dylan Samberg, he's got to be written in pen on the lineup. I don't think they're going to screw around anymore with rotating guys. They need to win these games, and I think he's shown, and the fact that they use him on that top pair there when Morrissey's out shows that he's where he ranks, I think, among the coaching staff size.
Yeah, Slamberg was awesome. He stepped up big
Slamberg?
time. And
Is that his
Dylan
nickname?
Slamberg. Exactly.
I like that.
He threw a few
He did
hits.
lead the team in hits yesterday. I think he did. I think he had 5.
Well, that's why we'll call him Slamberg from here going forward.
Was that like a slip, Slamberg, or are people calling him that?
That just came to me right now. That's a WST original there for you.
You're probably watching a lot of WrestleMania on the weekend, 2 nights. And
you know what? I listen, it was a great weekend. 2 Jet wins, WrestleMania. I managed to stay away from my phone last night. I came back, fired up the PVR,
Good for you.
watched it, was just in a great mood. Watched KNR way too late, but as I say, the vibes were great.
Slamberg.
And we went forward. So we're going to hear from Rick Bowness and some of the players from the weekend as well before John Liu jumps on with this. But so many places to go. And here's another why not question of the day. Hit us up in the chat. What player impressed you the most as far as, there's a lot of guys that needed to step up. There's a lot of guys that ended up on the score sheet. Would love to hear your thoughts on who sort of the stars of the weekend were. Hit us up in the chat with your comments on that. All right, listen, before we get to Bones and some of the comments from the weekend, I mentioned off the top of the show, Got a couple new sponsors. Want to give a big WST welcome to the folks over at Modern Man Barbershops, who now have 8 locations in Winnipeg, including 2 brand new ones on Pembina Highway, right near the university, close to Bishop Grandin, or over on Plessis Road. Now, Modern Man Barbershops offer a variety of grooming service, obviously haircuts, but also beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. Great selection of men's grooming products as well. Listen, easiest way to do it is to book your look, get an appointment over at modernmanbarber.com. You can also follow them on Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops. And if you're listening to the podcast right now and have skills with the scissors, with 8 locations in Winnipeg and a growing location list, Modern Man Barbershops are currently seeking barbers. So if you have the skills and are looking for work, send a resume over to info@aurahairgroup.com. But I think your boy Huss needs a trip to Modern Man this week at some point. But great to have Modern Man on, and of course, conveniently located somewhere near you with 8 locations now throughout the city of Winnipeg. And again, modernmanbarber.com. And a big WST welcome as well to Aquatech, pool spas, and whole home renovations. Folks, make 2023 the year you take the plunge. Visit aqua-tech.ca to design your own custom pool. Their team can provide on-the-spot pricing from designers as well as financing options that suit you. And what was interesting to me, I knew what Aquatech did with pools and spas, but they're also now getting into whole home renovations. Aquatech's done thousands of renos and have that as their foundation, and they can upgrade any space in your home. And if you are looking to finance, their team can provide plans that suit you as well. Schedule a design visit today. Visit aqua-tech.ca to learn more. And of course, brought to you by Aquatech. You can make 2023 the year you take the plunge. All over there, design the pool, financing, and more at Aquatech, and also on Instagram at aqua.tech. As we get ready to hear these out, I got to give a shout out to Donnie and the gang over at Manitoba Battery. I know the winter seems to still be here. It is changing, but listen, if you need a battery for your car, your truck, or even that summer toy you're working on right now, Manitoba Battery is the most convenient and well-priced option in the city, and they'll bring it to you. Order a battery today at lunchtime, or even by the time we start WST, and they'll have it sitting on your doorstep in 2 to 4 hours for less money than you'd spend anywhere else in Winnipeg on the same battery. No more fighting for a parking spot at Costco or waiting in line at Canadian Tire. You can shop local and let Manitoba Battery bring the battery to you at the best prices in town. Give Donnie and his staff a call at 783-8787. Order online at manitobabattery.com or give them a visit at 1026 Logan Avenue. And hey, a big cheers to our friends over at Canadian Club, Canada's favorite whiskey and the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and WST. The CC and Ginger is now available in 473 milliliter cans and beer vendors. And we are counting down the days until we can enjoy a few CC and Gingers at IG Field watching the blue and gold. Pick up Canadian Club at your local Manitoba Liquor Mart. All right, let's hear from Bones. And we'll go to, I guess, more from last night's game because, listen, the Detroit was where they had to get that start, but I think certainly the real challenge was New Jersey, even with their game the night before in Chicago. Let's just start right at the top, Remo. Bones talked about another good start and getting to the New Jersey Devils early last night.
Yeah, you have to do that. We've been in that position enough this year when the team's sitting there waiting for you. That's a great hockey club over there. Lindy's done a phenomenal job with them. They're fast, they're hard to play against, so even though they played last night, you saw their speed and their skill, so it was important that we came out of the gate hard and try to get that lead, which we did finally, and a lot of good things tonight.
All right, there's Rick Bowness, and Bones also talked about just the scoring, but also how balanced the lines were with the Dubois line, the Nemetsnikov line, and the Lowry line all contributing.
So Mark Tate does take a lot of face-offs, so I know he's listed as the right winger in that line. He still takes a lot of face-offs. Wheels took a lot of important face-offs today on Vladdy's line, so we're lucky we have that option. But there's Nino's like Vladdy. Put him on left wing, right wing. They can move him around. They're very smart hockey players, and they adjust to whatever you ask them to do. Nino's done a great job with Adam, and obviously Vladdy, and there's some chemistry there with Vladdy and Nick and Wheels. So yeah, it's worked so far. We'll see how far we can go with it.
There was some comments on the lineup overall, Reem, and he mentioned Nemetsnikov and Nito Niederreiter. I had this conversation a couple times with friends over the weekend. Where would this team be without those two guys, especially Nemetsnikov, with the way that he's kind of slid into the center position with Scheifele being moved to the wing? I'll tell you what, the Jets are certainly getting their 4th-round draft picks worth, and I think there's a lot of people that would love to see them potentially extend Nemetsnikov and stick around a little longer than this season. Yeah,
for a stretch there, they were the team's best players, Huss, and maybe the most consistent here over the last month. And you can put them on any line. Nemesnikov's played all the 4 positions. Nino, he said left, right, doesn't matter. And especially Nino brought an element that the Jets didn't have. And I think Nemesnikov, his game is needed part of the roster as well. And it's funny, you see people downplaying, well, they beat a bad Detroit team on a back-to-back. Anyone can do that, but I remember when the Islanders came here like a month ago on a back-to-back, and you're like, okay, the Jets, they had that poor game against Colorado ready for a bounce back, and they didn't even show up for the first period. So the fact not only did they show up, but they beat the crap out of these teams, scoring 6 goals in both games, makes you feel good. And I think it's awesome to see everyone's scoring. The lines are looking good and balanced. What he says, they all want them all to look the same. So you're getting contributions from, a number of different players. Definitely exciting. For a time where, we weren't this time a week ago, we were not feeling that great about where they were at.
Listen, the Winnipeg Jets fans, everyone, you don't need to apologize for these wins on the weekend. You can only play the teams in front of you on the schedule. And for crying out loud, this team lost twice to the San Jose Sharks in the past month. They lost twice to Columbus. There's no guaranteed points in the National Hockey League. But it was guaranteed that they had to have these games if they wanted to be in a half-decent position, at least, heading into this week in this game against the Calgary Flames. And the other thing was they hadn't been scoring, and there was a complete crisis of confidence, I think, in this team that came back over the weekend. And Bones was asked about that, whether he feels that the confidence is back in his club after the 2 wins on Friday and Sunday.
It's back. I mean, again, we had a couple of those games where we know we created enough scoring chances to win games, and you get tired of hearing me say that, but we did. And it gets very frustrating for the players when the puck's not going in. But they were making plays, and they're starting to feel good to see the puck finally go in the net for them. We love the fact they're making those great plays, and the Ds are involved, and that's how we want to play. So it feels good for the guys. I'm happy for the guys to see the puck finally go in the net for them.
Yeah, that is an understatement from Rick Bowness, that's for sure. Connor Hellebuyck, of course, I mean, listen, these games were somewhat lopsided, but you still have to get your goaltender to come up with a big performance, and he did it twice on the weekend. Here's what Bones had to say about Helly.
Well, in the second period, you knew they were going to make a big push, and they did. And he made some really big saves in that second period. They're a great second period team, if you look at their stats. And so we knew they were going to come out hard. We needed some saves, and he was outstanding. Obviously everyone was hoping for that shutout, and it's unfortunate we didn't get it. But we talk about timely goals. We got them tonight, and we got a lot of timely saves from Connor.
All right, so there's Bones on Hellebuyck. Here's a couple more Bones clips, and then we'll get to Blake Wheeler, who had some real interesting comments. Rick Bowness did talk about just the difference in play over the last 2 games, what his team did do that maybe was missing in the games leading up to the homestand.
Well, even that game in San Jose, we had 25 scoring chances, and we didn't score. Right, so eventually, if you keep doing the good things and playing the right way and creating offense, it's got to go in for you. Now, back-to-back 6-goal games, that's That's rare for us, but it's really good to see. But give the guys credit. They stayed in the fight, and they just keep putting pucks on the net and making plays, and finally it's going in.
Oh, stayed in the fight. Hadn't heard that one in a while, but they certainly did do that. And here's just one other funny one from Bones. He was asked if he got tired of saying that, well, his team had a lot of chances.
Well, I feel bad for the guys because they were getting all those chances. But if you play the right way, and again, I know we lost games that we should have won because of the scoring chances. And if we weren't getting their chances, then there'd be a lot more things to get upset about. There would be. But when you're getting those chances and the goalie's standing on his head, or you're hitting posts, or whatever the reason it's not going in, you just got to stay with it. And again, like I know we lost some games, and I said, well, did we play? The most important thing is, did we play well enough to win those games? And the answer is a yes. And we just didn't score. Now the puck's gone in the last couple of games, and we hope it continues.
All right, so there's Bones. After last night's win over the New Jersey Devils, I'm not sure anyone. I mean, I threw it out to you guys. Who were you most impressed with? Who needed it the most? Blake Wheeler was absolutely at the top of that list, and really had a productive weekend playing with Nikolai Ehlers and Vlad Nemetstikov on this new line. And here's Wheeler just talking about the turnaround over this last two hockey games.
I think first and foremost, we played one game in 5 days, sandwiched with that San Jose game, and we were in dire need of a stretch like that. I think you can't underestimate the toll that the schedule took on us, and sounds like an excuse, but I think it's a fact. Like everyone was doing the right things. Like guys were prioritizing rest and trying to be ready to go, and sometimes it's just a matter of the wear and tear kind of taking a toll on you. So I kind of had that thought in mind, during that stretch. I thought this could be, something that tips the scales in our favor a little bit. And, obviously we've had a couple of teams come in here, playing back-to-backs as well. And so I think the overriding point is, I think, schedule circumstances have, bounced in our favor a little bit.
Well, absolutely all true. But, hey, bottom line is they took advantage of it and got 2 wins to show for it. Now a couple days to prepare for the Calgary Flames on Wednesday night. Wheeler also talked a little bit about this new line and the success he had with Nikolai Ehlers and Vlad Nemetstikov.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a lot of, sort of towards the end of last year when, me, Nicky, and Stas played together. Vladdy's such a smart player. He's always in the right spot. He's a really easy guy to read off of. Wants to play a two-man game. He's not a guy that's, needs the puck or wants the puck all the time. He wants it, he'll give it right back to you. And, Nicky creates so much space. And, for me, I'm maybe a little bit past the part of creating a ton of space for myself, but to play with a guy that can put me in situations where I have time and space, I can still make some plays happen, given those opportunities. And I think it's just 3 guys that really gel, and we kind of have all the components you need to have a good line.
All right, there is Blake Wheeler. A couple more from Wheels, and then we'll welcome in John Liu. We'll talk about scoring early, something that the team hadn't been doing, and then, of course, pushing it for a full 60 the way they did both nights.
Well, our team's really tough to play against when we get the lead. It's so much of our struggles where we'd get behind early in a game, and we're chasing the game, and even if we controlled the rest of the game, it just felt like getting that equalizer was really tough for us. So it's definitely an emphasis for us to have good starts, especially when a team's coming in off a back-to-back. You want to establish your game and take over the first period and hopefully make them chase the game.
All right, one more interesting one from Wheels. And I imagine there's been some introspection on not just Blake Wheeler, but, many players on this hockey club, considering the way the last couple months has gone. Certainly feeling better about their position after the wins on the weekend. But here's just another interesting clip from Wheeler on evolving as a player.
Well, I still feel great. You just have to evolve a little bit. I think the game's changed quite a bit too. players are a lot faster and move a lot better, and you don't have the guys my size that can't skate that well to skate around. So I've had to evolve over the years, and I still think move more than well enough to be effective. And I guess the point was playing with a guy like Nicky, he's so dangerous. I think he draws so many eyes to him that if you're able to play off him and read off him a little bit, you're going to find yourself with a lot of time and space.
All right, so there is a longtime former captain Blake Wheeler, who was a big part of the offensive explosion on the weekend. And man, I'm not sure many players needed it more than Blake did. We're going to talk about it coming up with John Liu, Jeff Hamilton as well. And it is Masters Week. We'll have some Masters Weekend info on a Masters contest we're doing that you can enter for free later on the show. Just before we bring in John Liu, hey, folks, if you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, and Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, too, get on down to one of 7 Vita Health Fresh Market stores or online at myvita.ca. Guys, with spring just around the corner, get ready for it with Ultimate Male Energy. Formulated specifically for men over 35, Ultimate Male Energy is designed to help improve testosterone production, reduce excess body fat, build muscle tissue, maintain prostate health, and more. It's on sale today at Vita Health. And if you can't make it down to any of the 7 Vita Health stores, visit their website to buy online. Local delivery is now available. Don't forget that newest store in Linden Ridge as well as part of the 7 Vita Health, and you can always check them out online at myvita.ca. Big thanks to our friends at Wallace & Wallace, Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialist. You've seen their fences and trucks all over the city as they've been serving residential and commercial customers since 1946. As the seasons change, folks, if your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, give them a call. They've got everything: vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood. And folks, if it is time to replace your garage door, they've also got your largest selection of overhead garage doors. You can give them a call at 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them online at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Road off of Kenaston. I have been mentioning for a while, it might be a good time, fellas, to check out your menswear. How's the wardrobe looking? Big events coming up in spring and, of course, in summer. And F Apparel is there for you. You can get custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts to be worn both tucked and untucked styles, an incredible selection of menswear accessories, a 15% discount for wedding parties when you get your suits at F, and a free custom shirt and tie for 2023 high school grads with the purchase of a new suit. Pop down and see him, 190 Smith Street downtown. You can make an appointment at F. That's EPHapparel.com. And just before we bring in John Liu, great to see DQ Nick at the game last night. He was all fired up. They're very busy right now as we get into spring. It's always a great time for a blizzard. But I did see on his Instagram a couple of those cakes that we've talked about, the ability to do custom cakes. There was a big hockey wind-up, and they had the entire team picture on the cake. You can hit them up at DQ Manitoba to find out more on ice cream cake or blizzard cake for your next party or event. And, of course, pop by and see them at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs, DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. All right, Hammer coming up in a minute, but let's welcome in TSN's John Liu for his thoughts on a big Jet weekend in the season so far. John, thanks so much for doing this. It's great to have you on WST. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Remis and I were obviously talking about this off the top of the show, but what a weekend down at Canada Life Center. And I mean, it's been a long time. This has been a wild season. We can get into that, but it was cathartic in some ways. Goals were getting scored, good vibes around the rink and in the city. And it had to happen. I mean, could not have come soon enough for the Winnipeg Jets, considering where they were going into that game Friday night.
Yeah, well, and Andrew, cathartic is the adjective I'd use to describe it as well. Like, just from listening to the crowd, the way they were reacting, just to the little things too, like astute plays on defense, good shifts, momentum generating shifts from not necessarily the big dogs. there was just a whole lot of nuance. There's a lot of nuance to Friday and Sunday's wins, in addition to the obvious, just especially on Friday with some of the guys that were on prolonged slumps or that had been going through moderate droughts, managing to get off the schneid. There was just a whole lot that's, a whole lot of positives for the team. It's just too bad Connor Hellebuyck couldn't get the shutout yesterday. I thought Friday when Detroit popped a couple in the third period, but okay, well, you know what? The Jets let their foot off the gas a little bit, so they arguably didn't deserve the shutout. It probably wasn't a bad thing that they lost the shutout against a non-playoff team, just as a sign that, hey, you know what? Still got to tighten things up a little bit, especially in the final frame. But yesterday I thought they deserved it because full marks against a very tough team, one of the league's best, even though the Devils are playing on its second of back-to-back nights.
Well, and speaking of Hellebuyck, John, but I mean, I think back to the first period of the game on Friday when the Jets had a pretty nice start, but it was still 0-0. And I believe it was the Scheifele line out there, and Detroit made a couple quick passes, and all of a sudden, a point-blank spot in the slot, and Connor Hellebuyck slides the pad out. That if he does not make that save at that point, I have a feeling that everything changes as far as the atmosphere in the building and probably the pressure and nerves on the bench. And shortly thereafter, the floodgates open, as you mentioned, to have Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler score in the first period on Friday night after the long drought that those players had been in. You almost couldn't write it better, but Hellebuyck was a big part of getting to that point in that first period.
Yeah, well, but that's what he's done all season. Obviously, I only have my frame of reference is this season, but I know from just his reputation that that's what he does. He's a top-flight goaltender, one of the league's elite, and that's what guys at the top of their craft do, is that they keep their teams in games. The old cliche of always giving them a chance to win. Well, sometimes it happens in a 0-0 tie like you were describing too, because obviously with the way that the Jets have been giving up the first goal for a significant chunk of about the last 15 plus games, so really about a quarter of the season, close to a quarter of the season, where they were chasing the game, puts them in a negative mindset. That's like, here we go again mentality. Same with the fans, it's like, and then it takes the momentum out of the building, or sucks the energy out of the building too. That's where really it was noticeable on Friday and Sunday. It really felt like Canada Life Center was alive again. And so these were all positive signs, even though it was a little bit of a anxiety-ridden skid that the Jets were on. Well, they're starting to pull together at the right time with under 2 weeks left in the season. But the way that Calgary and Nashville are going, it's going to be a real fun ride the rest of the way. So, just buckle in and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, this week is going to be crazy with that game Friday night against the Flames and then Saturday night against the Nashville Predators. But, John, you mentioned that anxiety. Certainly the fan base had a lot of it. But as you mentioned, the fans really did step up in both of these games and get behind their team. And I thought that was big. Connor Hellebuyck talked about it last night. But I just wanted to get your perspective at this point, heading into this game on Wednesday, being back here covering the Winnipeg Jets, of the crazy story arc of this hockey team over the course of this season, with that amazing and unexpected start to the season, completely bottoming out over the last couple months, and then seemingly, I guess, hopefully from a Jets fan perspective, finding their way at the last possible moment, which sets up this, essentially playoff game with Calgary on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, ideally, you don't like to see momentum swings that dramatic through the course of a season. There's always going to be ebb and flow. And the teams that are consistent, like look at Boston. That's other level consistency. They really, I don't think they've lost more than 2 games in a row all season. And those are the types of ebb and flow that we can avoid the dramatic swings or prolonged skids. Then that's what really builds a team's mettle. Although some might argue that, take a look at the Tampa Bay Lightning when they were swept by the Blue Jackets in the first round a few years ago. It's a team that really wasn't challenged through the better part of the year, and that they just couldn't elevate when a team that was basically, that had nothing to lose, that was just happy to be in the postseason, that they just came up with a workmanlike effort. But anyhow, I'm getting ahead of myself. The fact of the matter is that what we've seen over the last 2 games, and as long as we that effort came at a very good time, because if there was any sort of doubt that the team was missing mojo going into a game like Wednesday against the Flames, where, I mean, potentially the Flames could be tied with the Jets in points. The Jets would still have the edge in point percentage if Calgary wins on Tuesday night. You absolutely have to be not necessarily peaking, but at least have your game in order when you're heading into matches like that. So I think that's if I'm not mistaken, you tweeted that this was arguably one of the biggest regular season games in 2.0 history, right?
I've been, and we'll talk to the chat about this, the why not question of the day. But I mean, there was a game in 2015 at the last game of the season where it was shaping up, and it was the Jets and Calgary, ironically, that could have been a win-and-in situation, and they actually clinched the game before Andrew Kopp actually ended up making his debut, because they were able to rest players and the team went to the playoffs for the first time. But I mean, the stakes are so high with the schedule around it. We'll see if there's anything else that can compare to this one. But I really do think that with everything that's happened with both of these teams, where they are in the standings, the remaining games, this is about as big as it gets.
Yeah. Well, just further to your point, though, about it being one of the biggest regular season games in the 2.0 franchise history, are you sort of taking into account the implications of what is coming this offseason and almost certainly next offseason, that there's a lot hinging on what happens in the next 10 days here, simply because if speculatively speaking, if the Jets aren't able to make it, whether by that they give it their all and Calgary or Nashville simply has a superior stretch over the end and the Jets miss, then what are the implications? Is that what you're getting at?
That absolutely is.
It's a swing game. Wednesday could be a swing game.
For sure. And I think that will be the number one game that determines whether the Jets are in the postseason dance, and if not. And listen, I'm of the opinion that I think there is some change coming either way, but how big of a change? And, obviously recency bias is a real thing. I mean, if these guys are able to get in and get on some sort of a roll, a lot of what has gone wrong over the last couple of months might be forgotten, or at least minimized by the people in control and making the decisions right now. So this team is fascinating. The situation that the organization in is fascinating. And I'll also say this from a business standpoint, just from True North. I mean, I think the fans really stepped up in these games, but to be able to get playoff hockey back here after a while would be such a shot in the arm, I think, for the franchise. And that's obviously another big part of what's happening on Wednesday. John, you're there every day hearing Rick Bowness and in the room. I wanted to ask you about Bones and what you've seen from Rick from at the beginning of the year, some of the tone that he took even after wins, to recently almost couching some of his comments, obviously not after the San Jose game, but what have you seen from Rick Bowness and the different ways he's handled the ups and downs of this season, bringing us into this massive week for his club?
Well, it's an extremely experienced veteran coach, with over 3 decades of either being in charge or being an assistant behind the bench. And so as the team has gone through its ups and downs, you can see that the coaching tactics and how he's been sending out his message to the public through the media. One thing that's sort of come out very clear to me right from the beginning of the season, and I mean, he, at the start of the year, because he was new to this team and getting to know the players and their tendencies and what he could expect of them, one thing that Rick has been talking about since the beginning of the year is just the search for consistency. And I know that's kind of like a boring principle to a lot of fans. Like, consistency is like, oh, you want the same thing all the time. Well, yes, you do. It's the 6-month season. It's 82 games. You're building towards something, and consistency is important. You have to know what you're going to get from every single player on that roster. They have to be embracing their roles. They have to be delivering performances that are reliable, right? A coaching staff can't be second guessing and wondering, well, what are we going to get out of this guy on this night, in this situation, on the road or at home? consistency is so important. And I mean, not just in pro sports, in life, period. I mean, if you're not consistent, is your boss going to keep you around? Right. So it sounds like a mundane, boring principle, but there's a lot of truth to it. And one thing that Bones has not said that I can recall at any point is that the club has been playing with consistency. They've always been in search of that. And we've gone through ups and downs where they've shown flashes where when they've adhered to the game plan that he wants, like short shifts, intense forecheck, good back pressure, all four lines looking the same, the defense joining the rush. When all those pieces come together, then we can see just how good the Jets are. They're a very balanced team with a superior goalie, and those are tough teams to play against because how do you shut them down, right? If you have consistency, if you have flow, if you have ballast throughout the lineup, then those are very difficult teams to beat. And so we've seen it in fits and spurts in the way that Rick Bowness has assessed his club, but I haven't heard him say on too many occasions that they've hit a patch of consistency. And then over the last quarter of the season, we've seen a decline. And so it's been interesting to watch how at times Bones has taken kind of the moral victory approach, where they might have been generating chances and opportunities and just gotten stung by a bad moment here or there, where he isn't beating up his team for that. But then other times where, especially prior to this past weekend, for about a 2-week stretch where he was questioning their level of energy, of urgency in their play. And for this part of the season, for a coach to be saying those sorts of things, that's a little bit alarming, right? So credit to the players that they were able to really deliver 2 exceptional performances over the weekend. But I think if you were to take a look at it from the X's and O's and tactical standpoint, well, yeah, I'd give the coaching staff a lot of credit there, because I think the biggest reason why these games went so well for them is the switch that Bowness and his staff made to the top line, putting Mark Scheifele at right wing, loading up their offensive weapons on that top line, putting Vlad Nemestikov in the 2 spot, or the 2 hole between Nikolai Ehlers and Blake Wheeler. And then that just seems to have strengthened the lineup all the way down from the forward standpoint. So I think that they're on to something there. Like that looks like a forward core that has potential to be at their best. And especially at this time of year, well, if it's working, then you got to run with it.
You mentioned Vlad Nemestikov, and I mean, he has been a godsend to this team. And I was speaking with a couple people last night, and I kind of chuckled because we do remember the heat that Kevin Cheveldayoff took from a big part of the fan base in and around the trade deadline. And I guess we saw Timo Meier last night for the Devils. I mean, certainly some people wanted even a bigger splash, but I wonder where this team would be without Nino Niederreiter and without Vlad Nemestikov. I mean, they have both been massive additions to the club. And when you consider what was given up by the team to do it, too, I think of the shrewdest trades that were made at the deadline.
For sure. Yeah. And the thing is that I talked about roles, players fulfilling roles. Well, credit to Kevin Cheveldayoff. He identified a couple of players who would fill roles for this club that clearly they patched holes in their lineup from the forward standpoint. Nino Niederreiter, he's tough, he's gritty, he goes to the dirty areas, he's not afraid of it. He'll piss off opposing defensemen and goalies, and he's scoring. He's producing as well, but they can play him up and down the lineup on both power play units. He's a really good teammate from what I gather, very good demeanor and energy. So he's been a tremendous addition, and the fact that they still have him under contract for another year, that's a plus. That's a win in that acquisition. They didn't give up a lot. Especially, acquiring a player with term. And Vlad Nemestikov, I mean, well, hey, he's only getting paid 1.25 UFA this year. But the thing is that depending on what happens in this offseason, they may need a center. And I don't know if Nemestikov has 2C potential for an 82-game season, or if it's just sort of a placeholder role or something that would work in the short term, or hard to know. But I mean, the guy has a long track record. He's a very consistent player with a very high hockey IQ. that guys enjoy playing with him because he's smart. He's in the right positions all the time. He's not a selfish player by any means. And so, there's a guy that I could see him re-signing here, on a couple of years or 3 years or something, depending on the cap hit. But, they may need Vlad Nemesnikov. So this 2.5, we'll see if they make the postseason. It could be ideally longer than that. Or actually, no, I'm running 1.5 month audition right now. Ideally, at least 2 or longer. We'll see. But he certainly is. At this point, it seems like he's filling a role that's going to be very important for this team moving through the final 5 games of the season and beyond them.
TSN's John Liu with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. I want to talk about your first year back, John. But just as far as covering the Winnipeg Jets, coming from Montreal where you didn't see the Jets very often, is there a player or two that stood out to you on the ice that maybe has surprised you? And is there a player or two that you've really enjoyed talking to off the ice during the daily conversations around the rink?
Well, I'll start with your second question, Andrew. And one player who I didn't know much about, and I don't think I'd met him before I moved back here, is Brendan Dillon. But he's turned out to be one of my favorite interviews because he's just very, very thoughtful, very honest, and very forthright, and somebody that you can count on, whether it's an intermission interview or a guy that's when the club goes through tough patches. Generally, we rely on veterans to kind of be spokesmen for the team. So Dillon is one of them. I knew that Adam Lowry was of that nature too, but to actually interact with them again, in intermissions or in odd practice days or post game or whatever, in the same role, the same type of energy. And so, yeah, very appreciative of guys like them that I really didn't know anything about or much of. As far as on ice is concerned, players that I've really come to appreciate from being able to watch them from day in, day out, and knew of them but didn't get the opportunity to see them very often. First and foremost, Josh Morrissey. I always knew that he was a very complete defenseman. Especially from an offensive standpoint, I didn't know much about his reputation as a defender per se, but he strikes me as very much like a Nicholas Lidstrom type of defenseman. Not big and physical, but so smart with good stick, fantastic skater. That his ability, just how good he is on his feet, allows him to be able to defend at a superior level. And then the offense, it's like, wow, I mean, just the type of campaign that he strung together, it speaks for itself. The other one is Pierre-Luc Dubois. That's before his nagging injury issues started to catch up to him at the beginning of the calendar year. Watching him every game, and yeah, I mean, he was pretty much on a point until his injury issues started to catch up with him. He was on a point per game pace for the first time in his career. So the numbers were certainly there, but just to see how he was doing it, like just how much of a bull he is in the offensive zone, like how he can protect the puck, create space for his line mates, how he agitates opponents just because he's so ridiculously hard to play against when he's on his game. I really developed an appreciation for his abilities because, and again, you really got to hope that there is a realistic chance that the club can retain him. And it seems like from the club's perspective, they believe that they have a chance to do so. And obviously there are moving parts at play that we're not privy to that are going to affect whether or not that comes to fruition. But again, like we're talking off season, and we'll probably have that conversation hopefully later rather than sooner, because it means they've gone deep in the playoffs, right? Or at least a reasonable length. But yeah, I think that job one for them this off season is to find a way to hold on to Pierre-Luc Dubois.
John, now that was, the hockey question about coming back. I have to ask you, just overall, we're getting towards the end of the regular season. How has the year coming home, working for TSN here in Winnipeg, and how's it been for you overall?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say how grateful I am that January and February weren't typical Winnipeg winter, especially January. I couldn't believe how warm it was, although my wife doesn't believe me.
Trust me, it
It's
gets
been an
worse.
adjustment for her, and I really give her a lot of credit for taking this leap with me. I mean, I knew what I was getting into. I grew up here, and I love my hometown. And so for her to move to a place where she doesn't like the cold, it's been tough at times. And the fact that March we didn't have a single day in the plus side of the temperature, that was tough to take. I didn't enjoy that. But aside from that, just being back in this community where the quality of life is so different from Montreal and Toronto, where my drive from home to I was going to say Air Canada Center, sorry, Canada Life Center. There's too many centers with corporate names attached to them. The Canada Life Center is like 11 kilometers. And I live right by, my wife and I live right by the U of M. And so I'll never have to drive to a Bombers practice or game. So a lot of that, those little elements of quality of life, and I haven't even mentioned the fact that I'm amongst family and friends, close friends that I grew up with, that I worked with, that I went to school with. There's just so many positives, so many pluses to being back home. That's in addition to the fact that it was a promotion for me moving from Montreal to Winnipeg to take on the duties as host, because I've never hosted before in my career. I wanted to for many years, but there was no opportunity for me to do that in Montreal. So first and foremost, from a career standpoint, it's been a fantastic move. And I'll take this opportunity to thank your listeners, fans who watch TSN broadcasts and have put up with my growing pains in my rookie season, because hosting is a very different animal from just doing the occasional live hit or rank or sideline interview. So it's been a fantastic and very fun challenge. I've loved that, but it's the fact that I get to do that in my hometown is hard to express how wonderful an opportunity it is.
Well, listen, I think as Jet fans, we're pretty appreciative. I mean, you pretty big shoes to fill with Dennis Bayak and Sarah Orlescu. You had such great connections with the fans, and to have you and Dan Robertson come in and not miss a beat, couldn't have not turned out much better. Just about the move, was this a long time coming for you, John, or did it come up an opportunity and thought, oh, this will be it, or had you always thought that maybe you'd like to get back to Winnipeg at some point while you're still working at TSN?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest with you, Andrew, I thought Sarah was going to retire in the post here because she's quite a lot younger than I am. And so I had given up on the idea of moving back to my hometown to work for TSN. And so this was not a long time coming. That basically this was just last August when the Jets had hired Sarah. And I'll never forget the day I just got home from a round of golf, and my brother texted me and asked me, did you hear the news about Sarah? My brother, by the way, lives in the southeast end of town, not far from where I live. But I didn't text him back. I just went on a Twitter to find out and saw that Sarah had accepted a job with the Jets. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is opportunity knocking. It's my one and only chance. And so the first thing I did was text my wife, and to make a long story short, we have a home in Atlantic, Canada. She spends the summers there, has been spending the summers there, running a bed and breakfast out of her home for the last 3 summers. And so she was out east at the time. And so I texted her to ask her, how would you feel about us potentially moving to Winnipeg for me to take this job with the TSN there? And she said, yeah, absolutely, go for it. And so then I texted my boss, and he texted me back a short while later. So it's funny, I was going to call you about that. And because he knows I'm from Winnipeg, and wondered that would I be interested in moving back to my hometown, even though I'd have been away for such a long time. And so, yeah, that touched off a process of about 1 month, where toward the end of it, I interviewed for the job here. And then a week later, I was awarded the job. And so, yeah, things moved pretty fast. That basically, right by at the end of September, I did a few days of Canadians training camp. I did the first regional preseason game, which was my last broadcast in Montreal. Then the next day, I started the 2 solid days of driving from Quebec to Winnipeg, and here I am.
Well,
and to leave.
Listen, it is great to have you back, and hopefully you'll have many more weeks of following this hockey team. I know there is a couple more games that TSN will be doing, and these games could be monster ones. I mean, finish up this homestand, and then the Tuesday game next week against Minnesota, and the Thursday game against Colorado, John. 2 final games on TSN with you and Dan, and those absolutely could be make or break games as to whether this team is playing beyond game 82.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking forward to those. I'm hoping I might travel for it. I don't know for certain, but last night was my last home broadcast, and yeah, it's been a blast. If that was my last game for the season, it's been a fantastic ride. I've had so much fun. It's been a great experience. I totally looking forward to next season too, but we're not going to get ahead of ourselves there. There's still a lot of important stuff to cover between now and then.
No doubt about it. Well, John, this has been so much fun having you on the program. Have a great day today, maybe away from the rink, and then right back at it for a monster tilt on Wednesday with the Calgary Flames. Really appreciate you joining us, and great to have you back in Winnipeg.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Andrew, and it's great to be back.
Oh, man, what a fun conversation with John Liu. Great to have him on the program. All right, Jeff Hamilton from the Free Press is on deck. Got to give a big thanks to our great sponsors over at Princess Auto. Obviously, the World Curling Championships happening right now with the entire country pulling for Brad Gushue. But coming up, geez, I guess it's next week, is going to be the Princess Auto Players Championship out in Toronto. And after the San Jose game here in Winnipeg, I'm actually going to head out to TO, take in some of that, do some shows from the event, and hopefully talk with some of our top curlers as well on the program, hit a few Jays games as well. But Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals and the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 locations in Winnipeg, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West. But you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Well, spring just around the corner, allegedly. And folks, you might want to hook up with our pals over at Consolidated Supply to get you ready for spring and summer. Of course, they're the leaders in the golf industry for years with irrigation solutions, artificial turf. They're the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba for golf carts. They can also help you with your property with those same things. Thinking about that dream putting green in the backyard, or just irrigation for your property. Not to mention, we're thinking about that backyard. Great options, including hot tubs, amazing outdoor kitchens as well. Not to mention, they are the leader in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see Consolidated Supply, Joe Spicy, and the whole team at 1395 Niagara Road East. They are open to the public, or find out more on what they can do for you at cte.ca. Royal Sports is Manitoba's #1 sports superstore with the biggest and best selection of licensed team gear featuring the Winnipeg Jets, Blue Bombers, NHL, NFL, and tons of new Blue Jays and Major League Baseball gear just in time for the start of the season. And of course, folks, spring stock is arriving daily with soccer, baseball, softball, tennis equipment, and a huge selection of bikes. But really, you got to see it to believe it. The biggest and best sports superstore around is Royal Sports. They're at 750 Pembina Highway. You can follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And just before we bring in Hammer, hey, we all know what the best place to get together with friends for the big game. It's always your local Boston Pizza. Big one on Wednesday. If you're not lucky enough to have a ticket to the game, get together with your fellow Jet fans over to BP. Enjoy ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, and gourmet pizzas, and the latest delicacies from the BP feature menu. If you're staying in, of course, you can always order online over at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's get Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press in here. Hammer, what's up? How was your weekend?
Yes, the weekend. It was Jets filled. Detroit, Friday. Devils last night.
Yes.
And I mixed in a self-care Saturday, as I often do. Did a lot for me, didn't move a lot, stayed within the parameters of my couch and ordered in just to take some of the fun away or add to the fun, depending on how you look at it. was otherwise a pretty fun weekend.
Yeah, there was definitely some self-care needed, I think, for a lot of people who took in the game on Friday night and enjoyed themselves afterwards. I used the term cathartic with John Liu earlier, and it really did seem, the game overall on Friday, but especially the first period. Having Scheifele score and Kyle Connor score and Blake Wheeler score, you almost could not have written a script for the Winnipeg Jets better than what happened this weekend. And goes without saying, Jeff, that this was a dire situation for the club, and they are still right in the middle of it. But a lot to build on off of 2 wins that this team desperately needed, and personal wins as well for a lot of guys that, had been in real serious funks for a long time.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with a handful of those, whether it was, Mark Scheifele getting a goal, whether it was Blake Wheeler getting a goal, whether it was Kyle Connor getting a goal, whether it was Pierre-Luc Dubois getting a goal, even guys like Nick Ehlers feeling better, Morgan Barron finishing. What looks to be like the forward unit, at least in the top 9, that chemistry seems good through 2 games. You got to take it with a small sample size, but you can't, with all the negativity and all the talk we've had leading up to this weekend, essentially, I think if you're a Jets fan, you certainly need to be embracing this. I think you got to be a bit careful. And, I asked Rick Bowness after the game how, people are feeling good. The music's blasting. I haven't heard the music like that in the Jets locker room in some time, to maybe, to temper some of that, right? To not get too low when you're too low. And in this case, not get too high when things are going well. But all that said, this was a very productive weekend for the Winnipeg Jets, who were staring at 7 games remain in the regular season to get back on track, to find some momentum, to get some good feelings. Like we were talking, that you can't just flip the switch and all of a sudden things are going to work out. That the Jets need to take full advantage of these final games, and certainly over the weekend, getting those 12 goals, 11 of which were even strength, which, with my math doesn't elude me here, that's 1 power play goal, Hustler. That was a power play goal too last night, which you can add to it. I know, Rick Bowness said after the game that he didn't want to put his last, his top unit out there up 5-0, but that group needs to get going. So I would say, all those things need to continue to happen. The secondary scoring, certainly the primary scoring. But I think if there's one thing left over, it's certainly figuring out that power play or getting them going, because you look at what they've been able to do over the last 2 games. And the question is, well, imagine if they had a power play going too, what that team would look like. So certainly a good, tidy bit of business for the Winnipeg Jets over the weekend, after what had been a month of some tough business for the most part.
I'll tell you what, I think that power play looked like it had a little more juice with it, with 27 on it. Listen, we've been talking about this for a while. I think it was a long time coming, frankly overdue. But it did add a little bit of life into it. And I believe it was Nikolai Ehlers who, in fact, scored that power play goal from Scheifele and Morrissey. But overall, throughout this, Ehlers has been a guy that is, in my opinion, has been doing everything he could, given his opportunities on the ice, to try to make a statement and to help bring his team up. We think back to the fight he had with Braden Shen, and the fact that he'd been the one guy shooting the puck and actually scoring a little bit. Holy smokes, did he have himself a weekend, though, along with Vlad Nemestikov, who has been everything the Jets could have asked for and more. And it rubbed a bit off on 26, because Blake Wheeler was productive, I think, feeling better about his situation, playing with those guys and the way they were able to produce over the course of the last 6 periods.
Yeah, a few things there. Let's start with that line. I think that's just a great looking line. I think they complement each other perfectly. You have a guy in Vladislav Nemestikov who creates space and time for whoever he plays with. We've seen that up close and personal since he was acquired at the trade deadline. You have a guy in Blake Wheeler who, if you mention his comments after the game, humbly said that he's not the guy who creates space for himself anymore. He's not that age. He's not, not that player as much anymore. And so that kind of, if you look at those 2 things, opens the gates for bringing out the best in Nikolai Ehlers. I'm not saying he has free range per se, but he is the guy who's going to be leaned on to gain the zone. He's going to be a guy that they, 2 wingers want to get the puck to, and we've seen when Nikolai Ehlers is playing his best, the transition game is at its best for this team, and he's shooting from everywhere. He's taking those shots, he's scoring those those what Rick Bowness would call timely goals. And so you look at that group gelling. You have, I think it almost takes a little bit of the workload off of 26, right? You have Nemestikov who's doing a lot of the damage in the corners. That's nothing to take away from Blake Wheeler. He won a puck battle yesterday to get that first goal to Nikolai Ehlers, who for whatever reason was wide open in front of the net. So 26 certainly still has that ability, obviously. But I think it does take a little bit of pressure off him to have a speedy guy like Nikolai Ehlers and to have a guy like Nemestikov who, again, creates space for everybody. And I think what the key thing here is that I think it's been really challenging for the Winnipeg Jets to find players that fit, that east-west sometimes game of Nikolai Ehlers. And I think you're having two guys that not only fit that mix, but are accommodating to it, that are adjusting their game to Nikolai Ehlers, understanding that he is, the point person, quite literally and figuratively, on that line. And so that's certainly a positive. And I think you're looking at a top nine right now that Rick Bowness has been trying to find all season, you could argue. I mean, obviously working through injuries in some instances, but trying to find, guys on different lines to mix. And what would you know? Moving 55 over to the wing, despite him obviously taking his fair share of faceoffs on that line, moving him on the wing suddenly opens up that chemistry for other lines. And we're certainly seeing that with not just the play, but results in the last couple games.
Yeah, and I think back to the first goal last night, and it was such a good sign for Wheeler. First of all, credit where credit is due. Nate Schmidt makes that entire play happen with his ability to hold the puck in on the boards and then get it into the corner where Wheeler was. And something that Blake had not been doing well enough or enough recently, I think, really winning a puck battle, utilizing it wasn't a speed play. It was a positioning play that, he sort of got in the spot. And next thing you know, he's behind the net, rips it out front in a spot that it is very difficult for any goaltender to handle when you got a guy like Nikolai Ehlers all alone. But, a great play that started going on, and they continued really to feel it throughout that game. And you mentioned the top nine, Hammer. Fair or unfair, Morgan Barron's not in that top nine right now, but he continues to make an impact. And, the speed he used, getting just a half step up on that New Jersey defenseman, turning it into a penalty shot, which then he did capitalize on. I'm not sure whether that counts as a power play goal, but bottom line was they got one coming from a penalty. And this is a player that is absolutely able to move up in the lineup if need be. But it seems like Rick Bowness is pretty pleased with the balance of those top three lines and the way they played in those games. And they're going to need to do that and more when the Calgary Flames get here in a couple days.
Oh, absolutely. And that's nothing to take away from the fourth line. I mean, they a lot of them, you have Carson Kuhlman come in. I mean, there were some plays I'm sure he would want back yesterday, but I thought they played an, all around pretty decent game. I'm focusing more on the top nine because we're focusing on the lack of scoring, right? I mean, they had 6 goals in their previous 8 games or something like that, or 8 in their previous 6. One of those numbers adds up to the correct thing. And then 12 over the last 2 games. I mean, that's a stark difference. And you're right. I mean, Morgan Barron is a fascinating example of a player who, has had opportunity for sure, but then went down to the fourth line and continues to generate. And I think that's exactly what Rick Bowness is trying to do for him, or is asking of him rather, is that he gets that line going. I mean, the reality is you need 4 lines. You're not always going to ride 4 lines, but you're going to need 4 lines when you need them. And particularly in the playoffs, when things get more aggressive, things get, it's, the play's a lot harder, the wear and tear a lot greater, the stakes certainly higher. You're going to need all 4 lines going. So again, nothing against them, but certainly if you look at the top 6, even, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just said top 6 and I was about to go to the third line because Nino Niederreiter and Adam Lowry is such a great combination. But really, if you look at those top 2 lines, they're both on right now. And I mean, again, this is a small sample size. I'm trying to inject some optimism after what it feels like months of negativity. I mean, you can look at obviously the last 2 opponents. Detroit's not exactly the greatest team out there. And both teams came in on the end of back-to-backs. I thought New Jersey played well last night, though. I mean, they definitely, the score certainly, I think definitely told the story as far as the Jets being the better team. But certainly I thought that the Devils, for a team that played the night before, really did have moments in that game and shifts in that game. So I guess my point in saying that is that I don't think it's as dismissive as saying, okay, well, they came in on the end of back-to-back nights. Some teams actually play better in the second game of back-to-backs. But just overall, the feelings of this line, just the chemistry, and I think what's very clear here is that, the Jets need 55 and 26. I know we talk about, them often, but we talk about them because of their impact on this team. The Jets need them feeling good, and right now they're feeling good. And when you have players that are as competitive as they are, and things aren't going well, sometimes there's a negative trickle effect through the locker room, right? There's just guys aren't happy, and so fortunately and unfortunately, sometimes we all played with those players where you're not happy unless you're potting points, and because that's how you view the impact you have on the team night in and night out. And right now it's just everything just seems to be gelling. There's a lot of smiles, a lot of good feelings after what's been a couple months of just not, whether it be on the road or at home. This team has not been the same that they were in the first half. And while this is only a weekend of hockey, and there's certainly, critical games here, every single one of these games. And as you mentioned, Wednesday against the Calgary Flames is just such a significantly massive game that you want to have good feelings going in there and you want to be playing with some confidence. And right now, regardless of the circumstances, we're seeing that from the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I guess that sort of brings us to this game on Wednesday. But I do want to mention the crowd at the games. And I kind of talked about this with Remis right off the bat. Like with all of the angst going into that game on Friday after the loss to the San Jose Sharks, I really wasn't sure what the reception was going to go. I wasn't sure what the crowd was going to be like. But I mean, even before getting in the doors, there was a real upbeat feeling in the building. And yeah, it was a Friday night, but it seemed like a lot of people couched whatever doubts they had or their negativity and went in there, trying to get behind the team. And we talked about the big save that Connor Hellebuck made at 0-0 in the first period. I do wonder if that goes in, how different the rest of that game is. But man, with the guys scoring that needed to score, the team getting the crowd getting behind them, and they brought it last night too. And sometimes those Sunday night games are pretty sleepy. That was not the case at all. And this team is going to need their fans ready to go on Wednesday for a game, Jeff, that I put this out in the Why Not question of the day for the gang over at Not AutoCorp earlier today. I've been going down the schedule and trying to think about regular season games, non-playoff games since this team came back. And listen, there is an argument that this might be the biggest regular season game for this organization in a matter of 11 years. I mean, first of all, there's the obvious playoff implications of this game. If you win, you've got a very, very good chance of being in the playoffs. If you lose, you're definitely in a tough situation and you might not have control of your own destiny. But also with everything around the club, like the potential of massive changes next year, which I think some are coming no matter what. We'll see to what degree they are. But also knowing what it would mean. And again, I don't want to get back to the negative side of things, but if this team doesn't make the playoffs, considering where they were, it will be an epic, epic collapse. And to me, this is all on the line on Wednesday night against the Calgary Flames, who did win on the weekend, but certainly didn't look like maybe Stanley Cup contenders having to come back against the Canucks and the Ducks in the third period. But I mean, what do you think about just the scope of how important and how big this game is, for lack of a better term?
Massive, man. It's awesome. I mean, from my perch, amazing. I mean, from some Jets fans' perch, I'm sure they share that sentiment, some of them, but I'm sure there's some that are having a hard time sleeping right now leading up to Wednesday's game because of how big it is. I mean, again, from my perspective as a journalist, I mean, we cheer for stories, man, and this is about as good as it gets. This is about as playoff feeling hockey as it's going to be. until the Jets enter the playoffs. And so this is, it's not quite do or die, but the Flames have the ability to come in here up 2 points. Now they would have an extra game played, but having that victory over the Jets,
they're 2 down. They're
okay,
2 down.
Okay,
If they beat Chicago
Sorry,
tomorrow night,
I mean,
they're
they have
tied.
an opportunity to pass them, right? Even with a game in hand, right? And that's and I'm not saying that the Jets would look at the standings and somehow change the way they feel, but you've been in a playoff spot virtually all season long. And to drop out of that playoff spot, even just for a day, I think that's when, not saying that's when things get real. Things got real a long time ago. But that game is, I mean, you're right. The Flames haven't been world beaters, but the Jets just lost 3-0 to the San Jose Sharks, right? So no one in Winnipeg, if the Jets came back and erased that 3-0 lead that the Sharks have, is saying the Jets, it was just the Sharks, right? They're talking about how they came back and mounted a comeback and all the other good traits that come with a team that that often are attached to a team that come from behind. Well, credit to the Flames for sticking around. I mean, Vancouver hasn't exactly gone with the plan recently to tank, right? They've been putting up fights, and Anaheim has their days. I mean, there is something, I hate it when people say like this team plays freer because they're out of the playoffs and whatever. But it is true. You'd like to think that that the team that has something to play for and is desperate, if you will, would somehow match or at least overpower that free style of hockey, but that's just not always the case. So, we've been circling this game for a very long time, and it's gotten even closer than I think we even imagined. So this is a big opportunity for the Winnipeg Jets. They have the advantage in the sense that they're coming off 2 solid outings, and they're playing for the 3rd time in a row a team that played the night before. So the blueprint is there. Get on them early, often, play with a lead. I'll take it, what Blake Wheeler said post-game yesterday. This team is a good team when they play with the lead. Well, they haven't played with the lead all that often, particularly this last half of the season. Before these last 2 games, they had surrendered the first goal in 8 of their previous 9. So they know the recipe for success. There's no taking nights off anymore. There's no, we didn't have it this game. They need to show up ready to go from puck drop and take advantage of a Calgary Flames team that played 24 hours before, and there's no excuse, and there's absolutely no other. You don't need to manufacture motivation for this. You know exactly what's at play, and the Jets need to show up and do what they did this past weekend and deliver the business.
Yeah, well, and listen, they showed up. Well, the big players showed up. That's what everyone was hoping for. That is exactly what we saw, and it has to keep going. Before we finish up, we talked a lot about Ehlers and Wheeler. What did you think about the top line, if you will? I thought Dubois was a beast last night and, very, very impactful on the weekend. And obviously, Scheifele and Connor doing what they do best, and that is get on the score sheet. Does this line have some legs, at least enough legs to get them to the finish line and into the playoffs?
You know what? Before I answer that question, I think this line is the result of 3 players that want to play with the best players on the team getting what they want. I honestly think it's 3 guys that go, well, I want to play with Kyle Connor. Well, I want to play with Kyle Connor. Well, the only way you're both going to be able to play with Kyle Connor is if one of you moves to the wing. We'll call you a centerman. We'll call you centerman B. We'll have to put you on the wing. We know you don't love it, but that's what that's what they've done. I mean, that's
Jeff,
what
is Kyle Connor the magical player that Scheif was referring to in his interview earlier last week?
I mean,
after the Sharks game,
know that both of those guys play the same position, and both of those guys love playing with Kyle Connor. The only way, and I'll just repeat myself, the only way that both of those players can play with Kyle Connor is if one's willing to go to the wing. And so, but to answer your question, I think this could be an exciting line. I mean, this is a line that are all smart. They're all dangerous around the net. And if they can get the chemistry going and find out where they are, they could be a very, very deadly line. I mean, I'm not in the camp of putting your top 3 forwards on the same line. I don't know how great of a recipe for success that is, but when you look at how the other 2 lines in the top 9 are constructed, they have a slightly different identity. And I think they have a closer to an identity of what Rick Bowness wants to see as a team collectively. And then you have these 3 stars that are aligned together. And it's like, okay, we've tried everything to generate offense and it hasn't worked. You guys go out there and do it, and we'll see what happens. And ultimately what we've seen over the last 72 hours is a very solid first line, one that, clearly has helped each other get out of funks, and you know they're going to be leaned on here, and you know that they're probably going to remain aligned so long as these good times keep rolling. And for these last 5 lines and into the playoffs, preferably for Jets, obviously, it's more of a wait and see. But I think the early signs are that this trio could be a deadly group, and certainly complement the other forward groups, in that they're the high end offensive scoring, and really no excuse not to bury, because if you're not burying with those line mates, you can't really look down the bench or at the coach and wonder why that's happening.
Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press with us here. I know you were, of course, on Jets duty all weekend, but did you happen to see what Connor Bedard was up to in the Western Hockey League on the over the weekend?
You know what? I didn't, but I heard rumblings at the game yesterday. What crazy thing did he do now?
Well, first of all, I mean, they just snuck into the playoffs. They're playing against a team in the Saskatoon Blades that have 111 points. He goes, I believe, 3 points in a big win to start off to win on the road in game number 1. Pops in a hat trick yesterday. They win in overtime 2-0. And the reason I bring this up, because we're hoping to have playoff hockey at downtown with the Winnipeg Jets. The Ice had a great start to their playoff run with 2 tidy wins at home before heading onto the road. But there is the dream possibility, and certainly I think this would be for the league and definitely for the Ice, that if Regina pulls off the upset of Saskatoon, there's a very good chance that the next round could be Bedard and the Regina Pats going up against the Winnipeg Ice, and that would be a huge boost to that team, although atmosphere was wild on the weekend on Saturday night, and I think we're going to be seeing some packed houses at the Ice Cave to see the number 1 team in the league and maybe the number 1 player in junior hockey potentially in the second round.
I don't keep a lot of tabs on the WHL. I should probably keep better. Obviously, I've seen what Bedard has done this season. It's been nothing short of incredible, and I can't wait to watch him at the NHL level and see what he can do there. He's obviously going to be a special talent, but you got to think, you mentioned they squeeze into the playoffs. Like, it wasn't that long ago that the narrative for weeks, it felt like, maybe even months, was like, when are they going to trade Bedard, or why doesn't Bedard want to trade, right? Because it would have set the Pats up. I heard generations to come, but clearly it wouldn't be that long. But it would set them up for a lot of picks, right? A team would take Bedard in a heartbeat, obviously. But that was under the premise that they probably weren't going to make the playoffs. So to have them squeak into the playoffs and have any kind of run under his leadership is not just a great send-off for the Regina Pat fans that get to watch him a little bit longer, but for an organization that ultimately, and more often than not, circumstances would have definitely wanted to get rid of their player as much as they appreciate. And it'd be great that he spent the entire time with Regina and all that other stuff that comes with staying there throughout your entire career. But to lose out on that kind of haul to get even one playoff series win, and certainly if they head over to Winnipeg, how great that would be. Just not just the obviously Bedard being Winnipeggers being able to see that, but just maybe starting an even greater rivalry between Regina and Winnipeg is never a bad thing. So yeah. I'll be quietly cheering for the Pats to get through that first round and see if Winnipeg can't meet them in the next round.
Yeah, well, we'll keep tabs on the Ice as they hit the road for games 3 and 4, and if they do get to game 5, we'll be back here at the Ice Cave heading into the weekend, and Regina up 2-0 on Saskatoon. That being said, our focus for the next 48 hours or so is going to be counting down to 7:00 Wednesday night, Canada Life Center. For all the marbles, pretty much. Jets and the Calgary Flames with the playoffs on the line. Hammer, great stuff. Loved all the pieces in the paper. Lots of content. You even did a Carson Kuhlman piece on the weekend. So
you sent me to a day skate, Huss. I'm going to come out with a story. I don't care if I got to go to the bottom of the barrel or whatever. I'm not saying that about Kuhlman, but I guess I was curious about a guy who came in, had played every game, essentially for a good chunk of time when he got picked off waivers, then took a month off, and now he's got the addition of a lifetime to crack that top 12 as the Jets make a playoff push. So I figured it was worthy of a show. But thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure. And thanks to the listeners, viewers out there that make this show. They're the ones.
Thanks, pal. Great stuff. There's Jeff Hamilton. We're pushing 500 in the chat for today's show. Everyone's all fired up. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that red subscribe button and join us daily, Monday to Friday, with the exception of holidays. Long weekend coming up. Hell yeah, Masters weekend. But yeah, and of course, it's available anywhere you get your favorite podcasts as well. Just search Winnipeg Sports Talk, and you'll get the audio version of the program just in time for your ride home if you're 9 to 4 or 9 to 5 or right around 3:30. Oh, I see Kenny's water bottle popped in a super chat. Thanks, KWB. He's putting that towards buying Remis a book on sarcasm for the internet. I can't imagine what spawned that comment in the chat. But folks, as I mentioned, it is Masters Week, and we've got a couple contests for you that you're going to want to know about. But I'll tell you what, with Good Friday coming up on Friday and the most exciting tournament of the year back, probably a great time to maybe load up on some Little Brown Jugs for the weekend. The generic lager just launched. We all tried it last week at the Sports Trivia Night at Little Brown Jug. What a great time that was. Thanks again to everybody that came out. It's your basic lager, just better. Impressively standard in the best way, light and clean to taste with a mellow flavor and crisp finish. Now Manitoba can support local without having to move away from the domestic taste they've come to expect with a light beer. It's available in 8-packs or by the can, through the tap room or through vendors, and should be in liquor marts and available by the single can starting in June. You can always pop by and see him on William Avenue and check out more. Order citywide delivery at littlebrownjug.ca. Got to give a big shout out to our friends at Aikens Lake. Cannot wait to get back out there next year to see Pit, Pat, and the gang. It is the perfect getaway for Manitoba businesses. Folks, if you've been thinking or looking for an amazing, unique trip for some big customers where you can get away from FaceTiming and actually spend some quality time in the boat in a world-class setting at Aikens Lake, it is just an amazing, amazing option. And it can be a very, very unique team-building business. Trips can usually be between 2 to 5 nights, most book for 2 or 3. The pricing is similar to what a company would spend to send groups to the U.S. or Caribbean, but you get to support a Manitoba business instead, and you get to see why all those businesses outside Manitoba love sending their people to Aikens. Incredible fishing and world-class service. The guides are great. Even a sucker like me can catch a master angler out at Aikens Lake. So find out more at aikenslake.com, or if you want some information, send it out to our pal Pitt. And by the way, if you do have, if any university students are listening to this right now and thinking about a summer job, they're still looking for some guides and servers to round out the 2022-3 team. It is the perfect summer job to earn and save money for university students, so you can get back in the home in the fall and have enough to pay tuition with some rent and maybe some beer money left over. Get those resumes in. You can do it at pitt@aikenslake.com. And just before we bring in Eric Johnson, a big welcome back to Breezy Bend, one of Manitoba's top private clubs with a championship course, top-notch practice facilities, and the best 19th hole around on their beautiful course-side patio. With great men's, ladies, and junior programs, Breezy Bend's the perfect long-term golfing home for you and your family. Find out more at breezybend.ca, or you can give our pal Corey Johnson a call at the course for more information about becoming a member. And perfect little intro, because one of Breezy's finest, 2-time Manitoba Mid-Am, Eric Johnson of TaylorMade joins us now to get ready for Masters and our big Masters contest. Easy E, what's going on, man? It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Huss, thanks a lot for having me on. Yeah, I as you mentioned, with my job with TaylorMade, I'm kind of on the road a lot in the spring and summer, and listen to your show quite a bit, actually. So it's an honor to be on and chat with you. Yeah.
Well, listen, it's great to have you on, and obviously, I mean, knowing you from the course and everything you've done in Manitoba golf, we figured what a great time to have you on, because I think for most people, the golf season sort of starts with the Masters. And just by the way, the DraftKings contest is open. I put that out last night. So if you're in the Winnipeg Sports Talk DraftKings group, get in there and reserve a spot right now. And we've also got a great Masters contest that Remis has set up over at Office Pools. We'll get you the full details on that, but the link is in the description of the YouTube channel today and over at our website as well. So get in on that. We're going to have a great tailor-made package as well as 4 rounds with cart from Breezy Bend, and I'll cook up a few other prizes as well for it. But this Masters is different in some ways because, I mean, the chasm in the golf world with the LIV Tour and so many of those top players that have gone to LIV, this in a lot of ways is what we've been waiting for more than a year to see how things would shake out and see these guys back playing the historic course going head-to-head after some of the most contentious months in the history of the pro game.
Yeah, for sure. You said it. I mean, everyone always looks forward to the Masters more than probably any other tournament of the year. Myself included, obviously, where we live, usually this time of year, it's, stuff's melting. You can sometimes, if you get a real early spring, be actually playing golf outside, but it's always kind of close. This year, I don't know, Mother Nature not cooperating just yet. But, the Masters really whets your appetite. And then, like you said, this one especially, I mean, everyone is really excited to see, some of these LIV guys back in the fold and see how they're going to compete and see, are they still the world-class players that they were when they were competing week in and week out for 4 rounds on the PGA Tour, or now that they've kind of, cashed their big ticket and they're kind of playing these fringe type 3-round music going, not a lot of fan type events. Are they still as sharp as, Rory and Scotty and the guys like that have been, on the PGA Tour all year, kind of, cutting their chops and waiting. So I think it's going to be, especially looking forward to the weekend. If you get some of those pairings, all of a sudden, if you can line up a Phil Tiger or a Rory Brooks or something like that, like the TV ratings are just going to go off the hook. And I'm pumped. I'm really looking forward to it. Well,
and Brooks, of course, won the LIV event in Orlando on the weekend, which I don't know what course they were playing at, but that looked like a mediocre Muni. I mean, not really a championship course for some of the best players in the world. But, I mean, that's going to add some interest to it. And, by the way, shout out to my guy Corey Connors for winning the Valero again, his second PGA Tour win. And shout out to everyone that rode with me in the lock shop and hit that at 25-1, heating up, just getting into Masters Week. But when you look at the LIV Tour, the Brooks obviously played well enough to win the tournament. I would imagine that he is a guy that we think would still possibly have. But, I mean, Brooks, Cam Smith, is there anybody else from that tour that you think, we might be talking about on Sunday at Augusta?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, like Dustin Johnson, you got to think about him, right? I mean, winning this tournament just 2 years ago, and the way they've set up the world golf rankings now are, I mean, we could kind of deep dive into that, but Dustin Johnson is now something like 38th in the world, and you're like, okay, is he really 38th in the world, or he was top 3 in the world 2 years ago? So you got to think about DJ. And then one guy I like to look at maybe is Joaquin Niemann. I think he was kind of the young gun that kind of surprised a lot of people moving over to LIV, because he won Riviera last year right before making the jump, I think, which Riviera is a huge event, right? All the big guys playing that. He's super young. I think he's in his early 20s. And just like clearly had the world right in front of him. And I think Niemann might be kind of undervalued if you're looking at some of those DraftKings pitch, which I like to look at from time to time. So I'll have to jump in there and take a peek at some of those odds, because going down the list, there isn't that many more other guys I think that are in, other than maybe the past champions. You look at Sergio or Charles Schwartzel, are 2 guys that'll probably be, I wouldn't really expect them to contend, as they're kind of, as you see, those LIV guys kind of usually at the end of their career, whereas Niemann's kind of that really young guy that jumped. Obviously, you mentioned Cam Smith too, and then Phil has quite the track record at Augusta, right? He probably knows it better than anyone than Tiger. So
he broken 75 in the last 6? Has he broken 75 in the last 6 weeks? I mean,
I don't think he has, which doesn't bode well for Augusta. But it is crazy. It's one of those courses where experience seems to matter kind of almost more than anything. So that's why we're all going to tune in this weekend. I'm pumped just to see what's going to happen. You never know.
It's going to be great. Listen, I want to pick your brain from your role with TaylorMade for a minute. And equipment is, we'll get to the ball in a second, but it was interesting. I believe it's the brand new Stealth driver that, many of the top players are playing. And Rory was using it. Then he went back to the TaylorMade he was using last year, and then back with the Stealth, but actually cut it down at the match play. Is using a shorter driver? I mean, fill us in on what's going on with McIlroy and what's going to be in his bag as he tries to finally get that green jacket.
For sure, yeah. I mean, like the equipment that some of these guys play is very, very scrutinized, especially at the top level with Rory, with Tiger, some of these guys, right? And I mean, they fill us in pretty good on what they're doing from a TaylorMade role. And I'm also kind of a gearhead myself. Of course, I like to kind of deep dive, so I kind of know a little bit about this. So the new Stealth 2 driver is what it is. Last year was actually Stealth. This year is Stealth 2. They kind of look similar. There's a little bit of different features, primarily more carbon in the head, so it's a bit lighter. The biggest difference overall is going to be the spin rate on a miss hit. So basically what happens is, for most golfers, when they miss hit the ball, their spin rate jumps way up. That's why it kind of flies a little higher, a little more offline if it's spinning sideways, and it's not as good of a shot. The new Stealth 2 driver has a lot less spin on miss hits. So for most golfers, that's great. That's what we're all after. For Rory McIlroy, the number one player in the world, his spin rate's already dialed. He kind of knows exactly what he wants. So when he put that new Stealth 2 driver into his current sort of, call it, bag makeup, he basically kept the same shaft that he used last year. What was happening was he was getting almost too low of spin. So the way that these new drivers are set up, you can adjust the loft on it just by switching the loft sleeve. What that's going to do, it's going to add some loft, hopefully add some more spin, right? But what that also does, it then closes the face angle a little bit. So it looks a little bit different when you set it down behind the ball. Now, for some guys, the average guy, me or you, you're not going to notice that probably. It's not going to do anything for you, or it's only going to help you. When you're as dialed in as Rory is, that extra little face angle, just kind of looking a little more to the left, he was not liking it. It was fighting with his swing. So he was very busy. He played a few tournaments in a row. He's kind of the de facto spokesman for the PGA Tour now. He's all over the media. They're questioning him before his rounds, after his rounds. He's got corporate outings to deal with, his family, right? I mean, he really just honestly didn't have a ton of time to set up with TaylorMade and go through the paces and get fit for the new shaft driver combo. So I think it was the players, he played pretty poorly, drove it pretty poorly. He kind of alluded to that. He took some time off. He tried a new shaft in the driver. He went to a slightly softer shaft, which same kind of manufacturer in the Fujikura, but he just kind of went in the softer version and made it a little shorter, like you alluded to, and showed up at the match play. And I mean, that drive you saw him hit that went viral on the 18th hole that one day of the match, where it's about 380 yards and he drove it to 3 feet. I mean, if that doesn't say that his driver's working and back, then I don't know what does. But I think he's pretty dialed in with the driver now, and I'd expect him to be flying it out there.
That drive you just mentioned was the best shot I've ever seen. Like, period.
It's pretty amazing.
I mean, and the guys that were commenting on it were just absolutely incredulous. And even he was, when he found out that he flew the green and got to that point, was sort of almost sheepish as he walked up, because of course, that was the hole to determine, whether he was going to win or move on after it. Listen, that was really, really interesting. And I mean, obviously Rory and the TaylorMade guys TaylorMade will be well represented at Augusta and every week on the PGA Tour. One other question that you would be a perfect guy to, I think, explain to us in layman's terms: what is going on with this ball rollback? Is it happening for sure? What's going to change? And who will be affected other than the top pros on all tours, I guess?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So that's kind of making some noise now. The first that we really heard of it on a business side was last November. We kind of have our global meeting every year in Carlsbad in California, outside San Diego, where they kind of take us through the paces of the new products coming out and our plan for the next year's rollout, all that type of stuff. And we kind of sat down actually with some of our head R&D guys. And they brought this up saying, we've kind of heard from the USGA and the RNA that this golf ball rollback is gaining some traction and it might happen. And what's it going to mean for you guys as salespeople, as golfers, that type of thing, right? So basically, what I've kind of gathered in the last couple of weeks is they've really kind of announced this and sent this out almost to take the temperature of the industry and sort of see what the feeling is out there between everyone, between the manufacturers, the players at the top level, the golf course owners, the daily pros that work at all your local golf shops. What does everyone feel about it? TaylorMade sent out a survey to all our partners and our staff players asking just kind of that type of questions, and we kind of compiled the results just a couple days ago. And it sounds like about 80 to 85% of people are not in favor of this rollback idea, whereas about 15-20% are. And for me, I have kind of mixed feelings. I understand why they want to do it, right? I mean, the athletes on the big tour are getting so big and strong and fast and athletic, and the drivers that people like or companies like TaylorMade make are so forgiving that it's so easy to swing away and mash the ball like 350. You're seeing some 400-yard drives with the right conditions, and they're worried about that making some golf courses obsolete. And that is probably true, but the question is at how much, right? I mean, the average guy playing Breezy Bend every day, that course is plenty long for him. He does not need a rollback ball. He's not going to want to play it. He's going to want nothing to do with it. It's basically only going to be for that top pro. Then the question becomes, well, trickle down effect, right? The top amateurs or college players or guys that are trying to get into that pro level, are they going to have to use the ball? What about at your local Breezy Bend, the club championship? That's going to be a competition. Is that using the ball? So no one really knows what's going to happen with this yet. They have until August to kind of make a proposal back to the USGA and the RNA with sort of industry findings and opinions. So in my opinion, I'm thinking that by August, we're going to see some pushback pretty heavily on this. And I don't know if it's going to go through. But again, who knows? That's still some time. But as far as, the industry-wide temperature, I'd say most people are not in favor of it just because it affects so little of the golf industry. It's really just those top pros playing on the tour. Everybody else, 99% of golfers want to use the regular ball. That's going to help them in their game.
Yeah, and I mean, from the sounds of it, and I mean, maybe we've just heard some guys that are a little more negative on it, but it doesn't sound like the players are all fired up about this either. I mean, they're sort of used to using the best equipment and playing their best, and anything that might change that, I think obviously affect some players more than others, but it would be a significant change that would take a lot of adapting, working with this ball heading into it. Eric Johnson's with us from TaylorMade. EJ, thanks again. We've got a great Masters contest and got some stuff from TaylorMade and some Breezy that we'll be using for some prizes. Before we go, and you don't need to get too deep into your picks, but not necessarily for your DraftKings, but we're going to go through the odds in a minute. Who's at the top of your card, though? If you had to think of guys that you think are going to be there sniffing around on Sunday afternoon for their chance at a green jacket, who are you rostering, or who are you putting a nickel on?
Yeah, if you look at the top, I think three guys have really separated themselves this year as the top three dogs, right? It's Scotty Scheffler, it's Rory, and it's Jon Rahm. And Jon Rahm is also kind of, he had a great start and he's kind of faded a little bit most recently. Looking at that top, I got to go with Scotty Scheffler. He's just right at the top of his game. Plus, he's the defending champion. His game sets up so well for Augusta. He was leading the tour in strokes gained off the tee, and with I think the weather forecast shows some rain, right? So when they've already kind of lengthened that 13th hole at Augusta, they're making it play long. If the course is playing long and wet, you got to kind of look at those bomber type guys like Scotty and Rory that can really fly it out there over 300 yards to compete. But I'm, as guys know me, I'm one of the biggest Tiger Woods fans you'll ever meet. So I'm always going to be.
What are the expectations for Tiger? I mean, realistic. I guess. I mean, he's already proven it. I mean, even when you count him out, if there's one place that Tiger Woods shows up and feels that he can beat everybody, it's Augusta National.
100%. And he when he played last at Riviera there about a month ago, his ball speeds were up over 180 miles an hour on some holes, which is right there with those bombers, right? Like, I think the PGA Tour average is mid to low 170s, and Tiger at age 46 or whatever he is now is up there banging it with the long hitters, right? So with his experience, if he can hold a few putts, I really do think he can contend still. And like we talked about, that's just going to be better for ratings for golf, and that's what I hope for every time he tees it up.
EJ, this has been a lot of fun. Great to have you helping us out with this Masters contest. We'll catch up later on. On the way out, do you want to call your shot? Is this the year you win the Manitoba Amateur?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can't commit to playing right now. We have a TaylorMade sales meeting already booked for the summer, which usually happens in August. So I'm usually able to get out there for the Golf Manitoba events, which TaylorMade supports. So I like to also be there and play and compete. But right now, my status for actually entering is up in the air. We'll have to see. I think it's actually out in Oak Island, which is outside of Brendan.
Love that course. That's where the Am is this year?
That's right.
Hidden gem, if you folks have never been this, it's sort of, I don't want to say it's in the middle of nowhere. It's about 45, 50 minutes past Brandon, near Verdun, a little off the highway. I had a friend, I'd never even heard of it. A friend of mine took me when we were on our way out to Regina, or maybe it was before Country Fest. Anyways, we were out in the western part of the province, went there, and I was stunned. Anytime I'm traveling in and around there, I try and add a few extra hours to pop in. That'll be a great venue for that event.
Yeah, I've actually never played it. I haven't set foot on the property, and I'd like to. So I'm going to do whatever I can to get out there if timing works out. Just with golf and my job and life and stuff, because I haven't missed an amateur in over a decade. So I'm really gonna try. So I won't have to call my shot on that just yet. But
first, you got to be able to play in it, I guess. But
yeah, that's
listen,
right.
we know the Breezy Gang will be well represented in that, in the Mid-Am as well. Listen, let's have a week here. Masters, go time. Good luck in the contest. Thanks again for the support, and let's do this again later on this summer. Maybe hitting some of those Golf Manitoba events that I know you and of course TaylorMade are big supporters of.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
This is fun. There he is, Eric Johnson, TaylorMade, the top AMs in the province, two-time Mid-Am champ, and part of a great group of really, really good players over at Breezy Bend. All right, let's get Remo back in here, because Remis, as we talk, and I know everyone's fired up about Tiger and the Masters with their thoughts on it, let's fill people in on how they can enter our Masters contest. And of course, Eric from TaylorMade's given us some stuff for a prize. And we've also got 4 rounds with cart from our friend Corey at Breezy Bend. We'll maybe add a little WST stuff in there. But give us the deets, Remo, on how people can get their entries in before they tee it up on Thursday.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. I see a lot of number of people. There's the best way right now, if you're here on YouTube, just go in the description. First link there is the invite link. If you're on the podcast, winnipegsportstalk.com, and then just at the top of the page, there's a link, Masters Pool. Just click on that, and that'll get you in. And as well, I think Winnipeg Sports Talk, if you go to any of our social medias, at least our Instagram, I think there's a link tree. It's the top there. But I would say just website top. I'll make it simple. winnipegsportstalk.com at the top, Masters Pool. You know what? I'll paste the link in chat and the description of this video. I'll tweet it out and put it on our Facebook, our YouTube, all that stuff. So
so
follow
it's
all of our
easy,
social
no
medias
excuse.
too.
You'll be able to find it, folks. You'll be able to find it. But if you go to winnipegsportstalk.com, there's a link at the top. If you're with us right now, just click the description, and it's right there. So I'm looking at it right now. You got 2 picks from the first group. We won't go through all of because there's a lot of players in B and C, but you're going to need to whittle it down to 2 of these 10. Sam Burns, Pat Cantlay, Max Homa, Victor Hovland, Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, Xander Schauffele, Scotty Scheffler, Cam Smith, and Will Zalatoris. And then you got 4 picks from that next group and 2 more long shots. And we'll fire it up. We'll have some standings. Maybe we'll just kind of tweet out who's the best. But you'll be able to go in and check. Obviously, Office Pools is a great site for hosting this stuff. So get your entry in. It's completely free. As I say, we're putting together some cool prizes from some of our sponsors, including Breezy Bend and TaylorMade for this event. One other thing for everyone that's in the WST DraftKings League, the Masters contest is up. I made it yesterday. We've got room for 100 entries, and I think like right away there was already over 25. So that's just a $3 contest. Top 10 get paid. If you've had fun with playing DraftKings with us before, even if you're normally hockey or football, you got to get a team in on the Masters. So that is all up as well. Let's get over to the Coolbet lines today, because we'll get to the hockey in a minute, but we may as well just start it off with the Masters and see exactly what we've got right now. Corey Connors, as I said, I was so fired up. Dusty and I had a few second places this year, but finally got a winner, and no better guy to do it than Canadian Corey Connors at 25-1. So I'm getting hot coming into the Masters. I'm fired up. And this is the way things look. Co-favorites at 8-1. Again, a much better number at Coolbet. I'm seeing 7s on both of these players at most other books. Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler. Identical plus 160 to place top 5. And then we go to John Rahm at 10-1 or plus 1,000. And then a big gap, as Eric mentioned. There's sort of 3 guys that have separated themselves as the top dogs. It's those 3 dudes. And then at 20-1 is Cantlay and Spieth. At 25-1, Cam Smith and Justin Thomas. At 28-1, Jason Day, Tony Finau, Colin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele. And then Eric mentioned Dustin Johnson. And I sort of couldn't believe I forgot him, because he is a former champ. But at times it just looks like he's sort of going through the motions right now on the LIV Tour. That being said, I'm sure Augusta will bring out the best in him. Cam Young's had a great season. Could a green jacket be his first PGA Tour win? Homa and Brooks Koepka. Koepka won on LIV on the weekend at 35-1. And then a group at 40, including Vic Hovland, Sungjae Im, and Will Zalatoris. Corey Connors was 60-1 last week. He's now 50-1 after winning the Valero. And Sam Burns is 45-1 as well. So you can check out all of your favorites. Everyone that's in the event is listed at Coolbet right now. And then as we get closer, there's make the cut plays. We've also got, if you want a hole-in-one, hole-in-one's minus 250. It's a pretty good number on that. Chances are there probably will be one at one point. And, of course, winning nationality. They'll get some groups as well closer to the event. So if you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. And all the Masters events, as well as, the PGA Championship, Open Championship as well. Odds are up right now if you want to get ahead of that. As far as tonight goes, in the National Hockey League, 3 games. Vegas and Minnesota playing in the Twin Cities at the XL Energy Center. Wild minus 129 favorites. Vegas plus 110. The Nashville Predators, who are chasing the Winnipeg Jets, are in Dallas to take on the Stars. Just amazing right now. 1 point separating Dallas, Minnesota, and Colorado for first place in the Central Division. Nashville just wants to stay in the playoff hunt. Dallas minus 198, Nashville plus 167. And the final game is the Arizona Coyotes at the Seattle Kraken. No surprise there. Kraken a minus 301 favorite, and the Coyotes plus 245. And just to see, we do have cup odds as well right here, in case you were wondering. The Bruins, no surprise, the clear favorite after the season they've had, plus 350 to win. Avalanche still number 2. The bookies haven't got off Colorado, plus 725. Carolina, even with the injuries they've had, not loading up at the deadline, 9-1. Leafs 10-1. Tampa 17-1. Quite interesting.
Big
And
Tampa.
Edmonton 12-1 as well. That, of course, is to win the cup. So it's all there at Coolbet. Not a lot going on today. Actually, it's not a bad day today when it comes to Major League Baseball. Quite a few games. I know the Jays are at the K against Kansas City. Jays the only team with the most. 2 teams have no home runs so far. Jays are one of them in over 100 at bats. I had a feeling that changes tonight against the Royals. And the Jays are minus 125 favorites there. Great to have baseball back. You taking any baseball on the weekend, Reem? Have you got back into it yet?
Not as much as I'd like. I'm really into hockey. I had my fantasy hockey playoffs. I was in the semifinals, so I was glued to that. There's also the basketball has San Diego State against UConn in the final tonight. UConn 7.5. I was watching the semifinals on the restaurant I was at on the weekend. I was like, who are these schools in the semifinal? What is going on? That Final Four is San Diego State versus what, FAU? What is that? What happened to all the big schools? I don't know.
Well, FAU lost. FAU lost to San Diego State. They came back. They were down 14. Shout out to my guy, Jake Boland-Moss from Coolbet. He was at the game, and he said he was on SDSU, so I actually bet them at halftime when they were down, and they came back to win. So, listen, that just started. I did that tweet. I was somewhat joking, but I am heating up right at the time that I need it. Corey Connors, 25-1. That was nice in the hoops. And maybe the biggest win of the weekend, Remo. How many other people do you know that had a Gunter Bianca Belair plus 244 WrestleMania parlay? That's right, this guy. And it came through last night. I'm glad I didn't have a lot of money on Cody Rhodes. He was a pretty big favorite and ended up losing to the tribal chief, Roman Reigns, who maintains dominance of the WWE.
Yeah, a lot of people mad online that they didn't give the people what they wanted and have Cody Rhodes win. And as Roman Reigns continues his reign as champ, 900 days, they were saying? Crazy. And I thought he played the pretty good heel out there. I don't know, when they tried to push him on everyone, they got all pissed off. So, but here he is. He's still, and we might even see, will we see Roman Reigns? Because I don't know, you didn't see this, Huss, but the news today, WWE Raw coming to Winnipeg, August 14. We didn't get Raw for like 20 years. And it comes here February 2019. Seemingly a great show. SmackDown came last September. Then AEW was here a couple weeks ago. And WWE must have seen, hey, look at this great crowd for
Big Wrestling City.
Yeah, they got to come. Like, what were they thinking not coming here for a televised show for 20 years? Now we get like 4 in 3 years. So well done. I'm looking forward to that show. And WWE also in the news because I think they're merging with the company that owns UFC.
Well, they were getting bought. A lot of people thought that the Saudis were going to buy them, the Public Investment Fund, because they wanted like $8 or $9 billion. But apparently it's Endeavor, which is the parent company of the UFC.
Yes.
Vince is going to be on the board. They're going to have 51% control. I'm not too sure how it worked, but basically the UFC and the WWE will be under the same umbrella, which brings a whole bunch of interesting possibilities. But I think the key thing for wrestling fans, they just hope that they continue going in the direction that they've had. Getting Vince out of the creative department and leaving it to Triple H and those guys has been a huge, huge boon. And listen, WrestleMania was awesome. Logan Paul is one of the most incredible athletes. I still can't believe he is doing what he's doing in a wrestling ring with almost no experience whatsoever. That was great. And our guy, Pat McAfee, shows up and gets another win at WrestleMania. Poor Miz. Snoop Dogg was there. He rolled out Rey Mysterio in the convertible for his match against his son of all people. Yeah, no. Overall, I know there's a bunch. I see Kabilis in there. I see GFL, Gregory Liverpool. He was rocking it. So, anyways, yeah, fun weekend for wrestling fans, and we'll see what goes on tonight with Raw, national championship game as well. So, quiet day for the Jets. They'll get back to practice tomorrow, and we'll start getting ready for that big game on Wednesday. But tonight we got some baseball, some WWE, some hoops. Keep us done. One thing we haven't talked about, Remo, but I did mention it with the hammer at the end, was the great start to the playoffs for the Winnipeg Ice. And obviously, I was quite confident that the Ice were going to make this through, but I've been very keen to see what's happening in this Regina-Saskatoon series, because it would be unreal if the Ice's next opponent, presuming they make it through this first round after getting a 2-0 lead, was Connor Bedard and the Regina Pats. They might be able to end Connor Bedard's incredible historic junior career.
Yeah, that would get people out there. I see people in chat saying, it's too bad it's in the small arena. Well, let's try to fill it. And the Ice Cave for the playoffs next round. I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes, because they had such high hopes last year and they ended up losing. So, another kick at the can here. I don't know if this is kind of the last dance here for the Ice, as players, age out and move on. But definitely an exciting time. We could see a lot. That could be one long playoff run here. Nice props to them for winning both the games on the weekend.
Yeah, you got it. So anyways, we'll stay on top of that, touch base with Munzie maybe at some point this week. And of course, don't forget, gang, that Friday is Good Friday. So this is a short week, huge game on Wednesday. That's going to be the driving topic on this program throughout the next couple days. Winnipeg and Calgary playing for that playoff spot on Wednesday night. Of course, the Flames do have a home game tomorrow against the Blackhawks before coming to Winnipeg for that game on Wednesday. And then we tee it up on Thursday at the Masters. So get in our DraftKings contest, get in the free WST Masters contest by hitting those links, and going to be a hell of a lot of fun. I'm just thinking, and this goes back to basically right off the top of the show, what a couple wins can do for a city, for a team, and certainly for the fans. Just had so much fun at the rink on these two games, and now I just cannot wait for this game on Wednesday to see what happens. And I'll tell you what, if the Jets can pull off a win against the team that's chasing them, that's going to set up a pretty fun Easter weekend, of course, with the next big challenge at home, the Nashville Predators, coming up Saturday night.
Yeah, and you tweeted out, is this the biggest game? Well, biggest game of the year for sure. I mean, it's a must-win and a can't-lose combined, everything colliding for the Jets.
There's so much else around this game, man.
And well, that's why you wrote, is it the biggest playoff or the biggest Jets game, ever in 2.0 regular season? And, there were some games in 2013. I remember the home series against Washington, but there's so many off-ice implications for the team, not selling out a lot of games here. A lot of the expiring or guys entering the last year of the contract, Dubois' RFA status, and the fall from being, in first place to just hanging on for dear life for this playoff spot. I agree. There's a lot of outside factors, not just, where it is in the standings by itself, that would lead you to believe it is the biggest 2.0 regular season game.
Well, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm sure we'll get Mike on, and we'll get the latest on the Flames too. We'll probably do that on Wednesday on game day, because of course they have that game tomorrow. But overall, though, very, very fun weekend. Very, very fun show today, dude. And I can't wait to get back at it tomorrow. Hey, just before we go, fill people in. We actually did a great hoops interview talking about the new team, the Sea Bears, and you were going to post that. And what? I guess if people want to keep on chatting, they can sort of hang around for that.
We're going to try this out. We talked with Chad Postumus of the Winnipeg Sea Bears. He was their first sign. We did that a couple weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, let's post this separately. So we're going to end the show, but the channel is just going to take you right there to the video. So don't go anywhere. Stick around and watch the next video. Give it a thumbs up, and we can keep chatting, and you can watch a great interview, because he's got a good story. Played high school here, played D1. He's played in Japan basketball, and he's the first signing of the Winnipeg Sea Bears, which is getting underway next month for the CEBL.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that. And by the way, hit that thumbs up right now if you're with us. Let's get that above 200. We really appreciate that for a big show today. to kick off the week. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that red subscribe button and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your favorite pods. Just search Winnipeg Sports Talk, hit the button, and you'll have the audio feed on a daily basis. Great show. Great to see so many people in here. Great to see the vibes back on the way up after a tough start to last week. It was a great weekend, and now we have as big a game as you could imagine when it comes to regular season hockey Wednesday night at Canada Life Centre. We'll be talking about it for the next couple days. We'll have more from Jets practice tomorrow, hear from Rick Bowness and whoever else speaks tomorrow from the Winnipeg Jets heading into the game on Wednesday, and then a huge game day edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk before the Jets and Calgary. And of course, with 2 more days before tee-off for the Masters, we'll also get some of our favorites to come on. I know some people are asking for Dubs. I just talked with Dubs. Unfortunately, he's back home in Australia right now, so it's going to be very tough to work the timing, but we'll lean on Feinberg, hopefully maybe Reed Fowler coming back on the show. But if you need some help with your picks, we'll get some guys that know what they're talking about over the next couple days before we get to Thursday. Listen, got to thank all the sponsors that helped us out make this happen every day for you, especially an official WST welcome to our newest sponsors, Modern Man Barbershops and Aquatech. Great to have Breezy Bend and Aikens Lake back. And, of course, all the other sponsors that have been with us throughout the winter and heading into the change of the season, the spring and summer, and the spring that will hopefully include some playoff games down at Canada Life Centre. That's going to do it for us, everyone. Have a great one tonight. Apparently snow coming tomorrow, but listen, I don't mind a whiteout around here. Maybe it bodes well for what's to come in a couple weeks, but it all comes down to Wednesday. We'll hit it up tomorrow with the latest on the Jets from practice and a look ahead to Wednesday against the Calgary Flames. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Thanks so much. If you're on YouTube right now live, stick around and check out that Chad Posthumous interview. Give it a thumbs up as well, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. right here on WST.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast